Good evening and welcome to another episode of Unscripted and Unchained RPG Review. I am DM Bloodworth, and as you can see, tonight's video we're going to be taking a deeper look into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons First Edition, Legends and Lore, and once again asking the somewhat rhetorical question of why is it still so playable? If you've been following this series, you know that I've been going through the books in the order in which they were released. Although this one is a little bit unique in that it's basically a renaming and a reprint of Deities and Demigods, and I'll talk a little bit about the differences between the two and why there's been a change and differences between the two. But for the most part, what I'm doing is I'm going in order of when they were released and just taking a quick look at each book and hitting some of the real key material that is in each of them. Oftentimes spending some time actually reading through the forward and the kind of the explanation of why the book has been written the way that it has, and then just at the end waiting for your response or looking into your responses as you comment about it. So without further ado, I'm going to shift over into a different view and start talking about Legends and Lore. So as you can see, I have the hard copy here, and I just recently got this on eBay, and you can actually see that. I mean, this is one of the best copies of first edition as far as condition is concerned. One of the best copies that I've gotten. I mean, the only thing really that is they have a little sticker on the back here. But other than that, I mean, the corners, the edges, everything is absolutely beautiful. The book itself on the interior is nice and clear, clean. I got this for around $40, including shipping and handling. So why did I get Legends and Lore instead of Deities and Demigods? The story of Deities and Demigods goes, pretty much like this. It was originally printed and potentially released in 1979, 1980, and it was 144 pages long, and it included two sections that TSR did not have the rights to print at the time. So there was a CTHULHU mythos, and then there was a mythos based on Michael Moorcock's Elric series. And they had to remove those, and that generated the Deities and Demigods 128 page version of it. Legends and Lore is just a renaming of the 128 page Deities and Demigods. And the reason why they might have changed it, and this I'm not so sure on, but they wanted to remove Deities and Demigods from the cover, basically, and from the nomenclature of the book, because this was released in, I believe, 1984. So you're about to go into the real swing of the Satanic Panic, and so I think that's pretty much the reason why they shifted to Legends and Lore. But like I said, this here, I might have actually owned this copy instead of Deities and Demigods back in the day. But I do have the PDFs of both, and so I'm going to switch to that now and go over the two. So I'm going to start with Deities and Demigods, just to focus on the spots where it's different from this, and then I'll switch over to the PDF for this. or just stay in there. It doesn't really matter. But the other reason why I picked up this is because, like I said, I paid about $40 for this after shipping and handling. You can't touch a Deities and Demigods 128-page copy for less than $80 or $90. You can't touch the original 1979, 1980, 144-page for less than 200. It has just skyrocketed in the last, couple of months to the point, and I'm going to get to a later book that really triggered the very high cost of first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, pretty much across the board. So now the books, if you're lucky to get one for under $40, that really is luck to get them. And they usually range between $40 and $50, $60 a piece. And that's even the ones that were not that much in demand. This currently is not as much in demand as Deities and Demigods, and it's exactly the same book. So once again, that's another reason why I picked up this version instead. Plus, it's a phenomenal shape, and it does match the orange of what most of the books I have in my now complete first edition collection is. So I am going to switch now to the PDFs. So here we have the PDF of the 100, actually they listed here as 146-page Deities and Demigods. And this was circa 1980. And let's see, the artists, so illustrators and everything, the cover painting is by Errol Otis. So very, very classic cover painting. And we will go through, and here is the forward. I'm not going to focus so much on the forward here because it's just presenting the deities and demigods, many of which are real world mythologies, and then a couple that are that are completely fictitious. So here we have the Cthulhu Mythos, and we have Melibori, and when I get to the page, I'll be able to pronounce it better. The Elric Mythos. So let's go to Cthulhu Mythos real quick, because, like I said, both books have exactly the same content with the exception of those two sections. So we have Native American mythos. Now, I tend not to use real-world mythologies in my fantasy settings, with the exception of sometimes Norse mythology, which is one of my favorite. But even then, only select deities would I use in there. You have the King Arthur mythology here, so Arthurian heroes. Obviously, that's fictitious as well. Babylonian mythos. So there's Gilgamesh. Marduk. Ishtar. Nergal. You have the Celtic mythos. And like I was saying, I very rarely use real world mythologies in my fantasy campaigns. Central American mythos, Chinese mythos. Now, when I do get to the Oriental Adventures, I'm going to kind of cross-reference this with those and see if they've added any. It's been that long since I've actually gone through Oriental Adventures to see what they've included as far as mythologies are concerned. All right, so here's the Cthulhu mythos. So this is later on removed because of licensing issues over it. It's once again, it's kind of strange because a lot of H.P. Lovecraft's writings are now part of the public domain, but in 1980 maybe it wasn't, and so that's kind of strange that maybe it was just a matter of waiting a little bit longer before they published it, but perhaps not. The other thing I'm kind of surprised with AD&D as far as its original Deities and Demigods and later Legends and Lore is that the mythology that Robert E. Howard created for Conan's Hyborian Age would have also been public domain around the same time. And so I'm kind of surprised that was never included, because I would absolutely use Robert E. Howard's Hyborian pantheon in an AD&D setting. And actually, I have used it for my own D&D campaign when I was running a Beckme campaign. So I just absolutely love the deities that Robert E. Howard had in his world. But this is Cthulhu. So obviously H.P. Lovecraft, and so you have Cthulhu, which is a greater god. Azathoth, Cthugha. These are servants of Hastur. The Bayaki. Cthugha's flame creature. Deep ones. Hastur's unspeakable. Hastur the unspeakable. All right, so a greater god. The great race. Ithokwa, land and air demigod. Migo, primordial one. Nyarlathotep, which is a lesser deity. Shoggoth, which is a very rare creature. Shub-Niggurath, which is a lesser god. Yog-Sothoth, which is a greater god. And then they go into talking about Elder Signs and the Necromonicon. So all of that has been removed in Legends and Lore and in later copies of Deities and Demigods. Then we have the Egyptian mythos. And many of these are commonly known deities. Let's go back to the beginning here. So you have Ra, which is pharaoh to the gods. So that's the primary deity. The greater god. Anubis, it's the god of the dead, or guardian of the dead. Bast, which is a cat goddess, usually like a god of thieves. Horus, the son of Osiris, the Avenger, and some creatures thrown in here like flame snakes. Isis, the god of magic and fertility. Osiris, the god of nature and the dead. Nephthys, protector of the dead. You have Phoenix, that comes from Egyptian mythology. Ptah, opener of the ways, a greater god. They do have quite a few greater gods. Set, which you see crossing over several different mythological sources and such. So Set also plays a major role in Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age. Thoth. And then you have this nice hieroglyphics section here. Finnish mythos. And you can see there's a mix of heroes and demigods or quasi-deities. Generally speaking, heroes are called quasi-deities in later books of either Dragon Magazine or in hardcover. You have the Greek mythos. Again, in Western culture, whether it be Europe or United States, the Greek mythology is very well represented in our movies and stories and such. So you have Zeus, you have Achilles, Aphrodite, Apollo. Antaeus is a giant. Artemis, goddess of the hunt. Ares, god of war. Athena, god of wisdom and combat. Atlas, he's a greater titan. Cerberus is the guardian of Hades, three-headed dog. Bellerophon is a hero. Circe is a black sorceress. Another greater titan, Coeus. Cyclops, so you have greater Cyclopses, you have lesser Cyclops. Sirius, greater titan of density and gravity. So some of these are kind of interesting. Demeter is the goddess of agriculture. Enceladus is a giant. Dionysus is the god of wine. I believe they make him a monk and bard, 19th level for Dionysus. Epimetheus, greater titan. You have the Furies. You have Hecate is the goddess of magic. You have Hades, a greater god, god of the underworld and death. Hera, and so on. Hercules, a demigod. Hermes, Jason is a hero from Jason and the Argonauts. Kronos is the former ruler of the gods and greater titan. You have Pan, you have Poseidon, you have Perseus, another hero. Prometheus, a lesser god. Theseus, a hero. Then we go to Indian mythology. It is very interesting, all the different cultures around the world that they have included in here. Yeah, the Japanese mythology. And again, when I take a look at Oriental Adventures, I'll do a comparison and see how much of this ended up in that booklet, which came out a little bit later. So here is the other section that was removed because of copyright issues. And so the British author Michael Moorcock created the race of magicians on the island of Melnibornian. Melnibornian. I am terrible with pronouncing certain words. So, but there's Elric, a hero. And then the various deities and, that are part of this mythology as well. I am going to confess that I've actually never gotten around to reading the Elric series. I'm sure I'll get a few thumbs down for that, but yeah, I've just never gotten around to actually reading it. The Nuon Mythos. So this is one that I think Gary Gygax really did enjoy because they have Lankmar in this setting, and speaking of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, so I'm not surprised that this mythology was found its way into the D&D realm. Snow serpents. I'm just looking at things. So a spider god is a demigod here. Salt spiders. Non-human deities. So here we go back to, almost strict Dungeons and Dragons kind of stuff here. So you have the god of the bugbears, and they primarily focus on just the major gods, so the greater gods. Although this one happens to be a lesser god, but the primary gods of each of these races. So you have the god of centaurs, the greater god of elves, greater god of dwarves. You have a lesser god of aquatic elves. You have Lolth, the demon queen of spiders. You have the god of wood elves, of hill giants, stone giants. Ents follow the same as the hill giants. You have the god of gnolls, the god of gnomes, of goblins, halflings, just the greater goddess of halflings, Yandala. And the Dragon magazine is going to add a number of additional deities to each of these as well. Kobolds and Kotoa, lizardmen, ogres, orcs. You have Gruumsh. Now, I mean, I could certainly spend more time here in explaining about orcs, since that was a recent controversy, about orcs. And if you just look at this passage here, orcs have many gods, but their leader is Gruumsh. His name is never spoken by non-shaman orcs, who refer to him as he who watches or he who never sleeps. Gruumsh's symbol is a great unwinking eye, which represents the belief that he watches each and every orc and judges him fit or unfit. Gruumsh himself has but one large eye in the center of his forehead. He appears as a huge... All right, so they go through his description. But once again, as if he is always watching and judging whether or not an orc is fit or unfit. For a lawful evil deity, the creator of the race of orcs, who's plain as the nine hells, that is always watching his creation and judging them, the idea that an orc would be anything but lawful evil is kind of, like really breaking outside of what the orcs were created to do, and what the expectations of their society would be upon them. It goes here, to become a shaman of Gruumsh, an orc must pluck out his own left eye. The proper worship of Gruumsh requires blood in large quantities, preferably blood from a human or demi-human race. Elves are best of all. Orcish shamans range up to level 5 in ability. So the mere worship of their primary deity requires blood in large quantities. They're a warlike, civilization. They're a warlike civilization, and their membership is, its peoples are part of this this mythology. They live to serve this goal. All right. Onto Norse mythology. So you have Odin. You have Odin's ravens. You have Sleipnir, which is his 8-legged steed. Bragi. Balder. Fenris the wolf. Frey. Freya. I'm just hitting all the main ones. You have Frigga, you have Heimdall, which most people have heard of. You have Hel. Loki. You have the Norns. Thor, probably the most popular, or possibly the second most popular of the Norse deities. Tyr, god of war and law. Valkyries. Then we go to the Sumerian mythos. And then the appendix, where they talk about the different planes of existence: positive, prime material, elemental planes, negative material, ethereal plane, encases everything. You have the elemental planes: air, dust, fire, heat, earth, vapor, water, and ice. There are the inner planes, which we already covered, and then there's the astral plane, and then there are the outer planes. And this long one right here is the 666 planes of the abyss. They talk about the alignment graph here, the planes of alignment. So as you can see, like chaotic evil, you have the abyss. Nirvana would be lawful neutral. So if you just kind of superimpose them, you will start to see where these various planes are aligned on the alignment chart. And then, of course, there are charts and graphs and lists and places to roll your dice. And there we go. So if I switch to Legends and Lore, this is 1984, different cover artist, but interior art all the same, writing all the same, and here you have the table of contents, and the only thing different is the removal of those two mythoses that were not were copywritten and they couldn't use them. So once again, you have another another book in the series that you could draw a lot of useful information from, as far as if you wanted to populate your world with these various pantheons and mythologies, you certainly could. They're statted out for for gameplay to if you wanted to challenge them in some way, or have them interact on the prime material plane, in most cases where you might encounter them as a adventure party, or just drawing stories and having kind of adventures built up around some of these mythologies, where you might not actually come into direct contact with them, or be in direct opposition with them, but perhaps you're playing a role in the game board of the gods there, and so you're on some kind of a quest that is something just far beyond your own understanding of what your characters are going through. So once again, the introduction of deities and demigods and legends and lore into the advanced Dungeons and Dragons catalog of source material is invaluable, and it's an important part to have in your collection if you are building up your collection and such. So once again, I recommend you pick up a copy of it. Like I said, this one is a lot cheaper in comparison to Deities and Demigods, and so if you can get your hands on one, and it's still first edition, so it doesn't matter that they've removed those sections. That, like I said, that particular Deities and Demigods is really priced astronomically high at this point. A year ago, you could have probably gotten it for under $100 easily, but in recent months, all of the prices on these things have skyrocketed. So once again, it is still playable now because the game has not lost any of this edition has not lost any of its appeal that it had back in the late 70s, early 80s. And so, once again, just keep on playing it if you have it, and keep on bringing players, to it so that they can experience first edition as well. And that's one of the reasons why it's so playable. Thanks for joining. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments you want to make, please leave your comments in the comments section. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And I look forward to seeing you. And let me just turn off this phone. And I look forward to seeing you on a gaming screen sometime soon. You all have a great evening. Take care.